eradicating poverty to creating what? Your eyes will be open to a lot of secrets today. Good morning. Thank you for joining us. Straight away, we'll go over to the news desk where Olaoluwa Aware is waiting to bring you up to speed on current happenings. Good morning, Ola.
Yes, good morning, Blessing Aiche. Greetings and a warm welcome to you on the morning news update. I am Olaoluwa Aware. From the remarkable to the riveting, we are your compass through the events, discoveries, and the inspirations that mark the start of your day. So join us as we delve into the news that shape our world right now. Today's news journey starts from Nigeria, where the President Bola Tinubu will administer the oath of office to its cabinet on Monday, August 21. The ceremonial event is scheduled to start at 10 a.m. at the State House Conference Center within Aso Villa in Abuja. According to a statement from the Director of Information Office of the Secretary to the Government of the Federation, Willie Bassi, each minister is allowed to be accompanied by two guests. The swearing-in of a new cabinet in Nigeria signifies the start of their governance and policies that will impact citizens' lives, economy, security, and foreign relations. Google has granted Nigeria a 1.2 billion naira grant to support President Bola Tinubu's administration's goal of creating 1 million digital jobs. The grant aims to provide digital skills to 20,000 Nigerian women and youth, aligning with President Tinubu's vision of increasing youth participation in the digital economy. The new director of Google West Africa, Olumide Balogun, made this announcement when his team paid the president a visit at the State House some while ago. The program is facilitated through a grant from Google's philanthropic arm to mind the gap in partnership with Data Science Nigeria and the Creative Industry Initiative for Africa. While Nigeria's Vice President Kashim Shettima praised Google's initiative, highlighted the potential of Nigeria's youth to contribute to the digital sector, President Bola Tinubu talked about how education and technology can help reduce poverty, and he thinks the digital economy and phones are important for Nigeria's future. Away from that, the federal government has allocated 5 billion naira to each state and the Federal Capital Territory, FCT, for the purchase of food items to distribute among the less privileged, as revealed by Governor Babagana Zulum of Borno State after a National Economic Council NEC meeting. This is to address the rising cost of food and petrol following the removal of subsidies. He also said the government has provided 5 trucks of rice to each state governor and established a committee made up of Anambra State Governor Charles Soludo, the chairman of the Nigerian Governors Forum, Governor Abdulrazak Abdurrahman of Kwara State, and others to engage with the Nigerian Labour Congress NLC regarding palliatives in response to the subsidy removal. Next most recent meeting comes after the Nigerian National Petroleum Company (NNPCL) secured a $3 billion emergency crude repayment loan from African Export-Import Bank, Afrexim Bank. And the decision to borrow money to support the Naira is raising concern among Nigeria's economic directors. This is about the $3 billion loan the Nigerian National Petroleum Corporation Limited is taking from Afrexim Bank to boost dollar supply and stabilize the exchange rate. Experts worry that borrowing without a solid plan for economic growth and production might repeat past mistakes. While some see potential benefits in the loan, others caution against short-term solutions that could lead to more problems down the road. This brings to the fore the need for government or development drivers to focus on sustainable long-term solutions that address fundamental issues. And moving on, 16 people suspected to have engaged in activities such as touting, hawking, unauthorized foreign exchange operations, and scavenging within the Murtala Mohammed Airport premises have been arrested by a joint monitoring task force JMTF set up to enforce discipline in that environment. The operation, which covered the landside, car parks and access roads, began on Tuesday, August 15, 2023. The Director of Public Affairs and Consumer Protection at FAN, Abdullahi Yakubu Funtua, who confirmed that all the suspects have been handed over to the Nigerian Police Command for appropriate legal actions, says maintaining order and professionalism within the airport ecosystem will enhance the overall experience for travelers and reinforce the proper functioning of aviation operations. And still in Nigeria, the Kano State government has asked private schools in the state to suspend any increase in school fees in line with the state's commitment to providing quality education. Governor Abba Yusuf's policy aims to ensure that education remains accessible and affordable for all students. The decision came after a meeting between Baba Umar, the special advisor to the Kano State government on private schools, and stakeholders from the private education sector. While this move is intended to alleviate financial pressures on families, it has sparked mixed reactions among school owners and parents with concerns about the financial sustainability of the schools. To enforce this directive, the government will need to establish monitoring and evaluation mechanisms to balance affordability and sustainability of education. But to strike the balance, the government has other options of providing financial support and incentives to private schools, allowing flexible fee structures, exploring public-private partnerships, and considering gradual fee adjustments. And now we move away from Nigeria, but still in Africa. After a three-day assembly in the Democratic Republic of Congo's parliament, the majority of participants have agreed to terminate military rule in two eastern provinces grappling with deep-seated insecurity issues. The state of siege, which saw military authority replace civil governance, was implemented in May 2021 by the central government to combat armed groups in Ituri and North Kivu provinces. However, a recent report submitted by Secretary General Antonio Guterres to the United Nations Security Council indicated a worsening situation in these provinces, where approximately 4 million individuals have been displaced. During a press conference in Kinshasa, the capital, the government spokesperson Patrick Muyaya says it's up to the president to take the next step on this matter. But this signifies a potential shift in governance and security dynamics in the region, and this could potentially encourage humanitarian assistance, economic development, infrastructure, and political engagement, fostering stability and development in the region. In South Africa, the Catholic Church has led a class action lawsuit against mining companies in the country in the interest of coal miners who suffer from lung diseases. The Southern African Bishops' Conference confirmed that legal documents were submitted to South Africa's High Court, and Archbishop of Cape Town, Stephen Breslin, explained that the church had to intervene because many ex-mine workers are no longer part of trade unions and lack the resources to seek legal action against large companies responsible for their health issues. Represented by lawyer Richard Spores, who has previously secured compensation in similar cases, the lawsuit has been filed on behalf of 17 former and current mine workers, asking for compensation also for the families of those who succumbed to coal dust-induced illnesses since 1965. The legal action targets prominent mining entities such as BHP, South 32, and South Africa's Seriti, and they are yet to publicly respond to the lawsuit. Now let's take a breather. We'll be back with more stories outside of Africa. And welcome back to the morning news update. Once again, I am Olaoluwa Awe. Now let's touch on the Middle East. Saudia, the Saudi Arabia flag carrier, has introduced a special promotional offer granting travelers a discount of up to 50% for flights between the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia and its international destinations. The discount applies to both economy and business classes, but there are blackout dates around September 20 to 24 and November 15 to 23 for outgoing flights from Saudi Arabia, as well as September 24 to 27 and November 24 to 30 for incoming flights to Saudi Arabia. Both business and economy class fares are eligible for this 50% discount, and passengers can make their first booking modification without any charges. And away from that, in India, tomato prices have increased due to adverse weather conditions and pest infestations affecting key production regions. As a result, India's central bank issued a warning about the detrimental impact of higher food prices on household budgets, a situation that is expected to worsen. To address the crisis, the government has lifted import restrictions to source tomatoes from Nepal, aiming to alleviate the pressure on food costs and provide relief to consumers. Rising vegetable prices in the aftermath of a poor harvest have led Burger King's Indian outlets to remove tomatoes from their menu offerings, mirroring the moves of other major fast food chains. The United States has approved a $3.5 billion deal for Israel to sell its Arrow 3 missile defense system to Germany, as revealed by the Israeli Ministry of Defense. The agreement involves senior officials from both countries signing a letter of commitment to the deal with an initial payment of $600 million. While speaking on the issue, the chairwoman of the German Bundestag's Defense Committee, Marie-Agnes Strack-Zimmermann, expressed relief at the U.S. approval and highlighted the unique features of the Arrow 3 system. She noted that the system's ability to function in the stratosphere at an altitude of 100 kilometers sets it apart as the first anti-ballistic system with such capabilities. The approved sale of Israel's Arrow 3 missile defense system to Germany brings enhanced defense capabilities and strategic partnership, but also raises concerns about financial costs, security implications, and potential geopolitical tensions. And away from that, coach of the U.S. women's soccer team, Vlatko Andonovsky, has stepped down after the performance in the Women's World Cup, where they were eliminated by Sweden. The team's early exit marked a significant departure from their successful history. Twila Kilgore has been named as the interim head coach to lead the team forward. The decision comes amid calls for a fresh direction after the team's underwhelming showing. The resignation of the U.S. women's soccer coach Vlatko Andonovsky highlights the importance of consistent performance and adaptability in sports leadership, especially in the face of challenges and changing team dynamics. It underscores that success in competitive sports requires ongoing strategic planning and development to maintain a high level of performance and achieve desired goals. A drilling rig has arrived at Lebanon's Block 9 for oil and gas exploration, made possible by a recent agreement that defined the maritime border between Lebanon and Israel, although the two countries are still at war and can't talk directly. A group led by Total Energies from France and including Eni from Italy and Qatar Energy is conducting the exploration, with Qatar Energy replacing a Russian company. Minister of Public Works and Transport Ali Hemi announced the development on social platform X, stating that the oil and gas exploration vessel in Block number 9 had reached its drilling point. It is a reminder that diplomatic solutions and partnerships facilitated by international organizations, if necessary, can lead to opportunities for economic development and stability. The outcome of the oil and gas exploration at Lebanon's Block 9, resulting from the border agreement with Israel, could have both positive and negative effects, potentially bringing economic benefits through resource development, while also raising concerns about geopolitical tensions and environmental impacts. And that's the morning news update on Souq News. I am Olaoluwa Awe. After this break, Blessing and I will return to analyze this update. Stay tuned.
Again, by introducing to you the Director, Policy and Research, Africa Development Study Center, Idahosa Osamanze, who's looking very sporty this morning. Good morning, sir.
Good morning, Blessing. Good morning.
It is Friday. Do we have plans for the gym?
Oh, yes, I am thinking so.
That's a good thing.
Good to have you on the show.
Oh, my pleasure, yeah.
All right, now first, let's look at the newly appointed ministers to whom the President will administer the oath of office on Monday, August 21. Now, the swearing of this new cabinet means that their work begins and they are to start implementing policies that will shape lives and change the different ministries to which they have been assigned.
Yeah, it's reassuring now that, of course, we have been able to determine that the ministers will all be on seat now to oversee the preparation of the 2024 budget, on the basis of which, of course, we will be able to assess the direction of the new regime.
Okay.
Well, some call it a ceremony, but I don't see it as a ceremony. I can only imagine a lot of them with papers in hand and pen, making jottings already, because after that particular swearing in, work starts immediately, and Nigerians will hold them to ransom, expectedly anyway. And when I say hold as in to accountability, that's what I mean, not ransom.
Okay.
Yes, essentially.
Well, I guess congratulations are in order to the newly appointed ministers, and we have high expectations of you all. We hope that you deliver on your mandate. Moving away from that now to digital economy. You know, we talked much about that yesterday, so it seems like Google was with us all the way, as they are offering a grant of 1.2 billion naira to support President Tinubu's administration's goal of creating 1 million digital jobs. Now, the grant aims to provide digital skills to 20,000 Nigerian women and youth. Like I said, in alignment with the president's vision to create 1 million digital jobs. This is a great partnership coming from Google. What do you think?
Well, it's expected. We've had this conversation yesterday, and I think that's really the strategic relevance of the Minister for Communication and Digital Economy, who has been in that arena for a very long time, and understand that this support will sure come to him. And so we're expecting that more will come, more fund will come, and more youth and women will be empowered. At least we will be able to create more wealth and then prosperity for the entire nation.
As a matter of fact, Google has always been there. There has been this program, Digital Skills for Africa. It has been in existence since about 2012 or 2013 or thereabouts. So at no point in time has Google left Africa to itself when it comes to bridging that digital divide. So this is a 1.2 billion naira grant. They've done so much more, and I think it's just like, okay, let's jumpstart this new regime with this one and see how we can take it from here. But the fact that they are focusing on women and young people, it's applauded, because we need more women in tech. Of course, the advocacy is real, women in tech, girls coding and so on and so forth, but then this is welcome, like they always say.
And we also, like Idahosa mentioned, hope to see more people coming on board, more tech companies coming on board. Come on, the tech industry globally has benefited a lot from the Nigerian economy, from the Nigerian market. So it's time to give back and be more philanthropic, like Google has set the pace.
Yeah, and I think another thing just to add is to see that also young people, whether men or women, are also leveraging these opportunities and use it for their own good. You see, it's not just enough for Google to send us money. We should also be creating the new Zuckerbergs of this world and all the big people who can also invent things that will make so much money, and we can also donate to other clients.
Particularly in new softwares that the world is really in high demand of, like the artificial intelligence softwares. If we can have our own home-based solutions to some of these things, it will really go a long way.
It's about starting early and not just joining midway. There is this early mover advantage that happens everywhere in the world. Where are we now? Well, we would not say we are starting very early, but at least it is not too late to start. And to be honest, Nigerian youths are not doing badly. The interest they are showing in these things is massive. And just like we read yesterday that 5 universities have been handpicked to be, to start a master's degree
in artificial intelligence.
That is still part of what we're talking about. We are part of the conversation now, and it can only get better, like they say.
Yes, there is always room for better. Now we'll talk about the effect of subsidy removal, as the federal government has allocated 5 billion naira each to the 36 states of the Federation, including the Federal Capital Territory, for the purchase of food items to distribute among the less privileged citizens. We saw something like this happen during the COVID pandemic when there was a lockdown, and so palliatives were shared to different states. But the sharing formula created a lot of problems. But this time around, there is a committee set up to oversee this. What's our expectations towards this?
I do hope that state governors had learned from the lesson of the past, because of course I think it was about 2 weeks ago that even the warehouse of Adamawa State was vandalized by people who were looking for food in there, and I think they will do well, because of course the news is everywhere, and people will be looking at government to see that this thing really trickle down to the ordinary man on the street, and let's see them to be sharing these rice, as it were, whatever it is that the federal government has given to the state, to be used judiciously for its purpose. And I think politicians become very sensitive. Campaign is still very far away, which is actually the real reason why a lot of all these things don't get back, because they keep it for political patronage. They should be able to release these things. The federal government is magnanimous enough to say, okay, take some money and let's cushion the effect of the removal of subsidy on the downtrodden. And I do hope that this gets to the downtrodden.
Yes, it's not just about it getting to the downtrodden. What is the quality of what gets to the downtrodden? If the lessons from COVID...
And even quantity.
Yes. No, if we have to learn anything from COVID experience, the kind of food that got to the people is not worthy of being called food in the first place. Because there seems to be some middleman between the federal government agency that disburses and the so-called downtrodden, because you would not even feed some of those grains to your dog, essentially. So that is one. Then, what about, is it a regular, or is it a one-off grant, or is it a constant thing? Hunger is regular. People will get hungry. You give them this 5 billion naira now for food. After a while, they will get hungry every time. Now, what happens to the days after the distribution of this? So we should be looking at what is sustainable. This is just a temporary thing. And
yeah,
also does not like the word palliative, so yeah, I won't use palliative.
Yeah, social intervention it is, because you see, the real challenge is the fact that there's so much pressure on the government. Everybody is talking about hardship and hardship and hardship. For me, the better way to actually channel these resources was actually to put it in those critical agricultural areas where the president has actually earmarked to say, we want to put some money here, let them go and plant food. It would take corn 3 months
to mature.
Because like they say, the Chinese proverb says, if you give a man a fish, you feed him for a day. But if you teach him how to fish, you would have fed him for all his lifetime. And I think that's what our government should learn to do, not giving people money. You see, when you hear the figure 5 billion, it looks very big. Now, when you put calculator to this money, you will discover that it's actually equal to zero or nothing. Imagine that there are 300,000 people
in each state.
In a state to benefit from this.
And we are more than that. They are more than that.
No, let's assume the very poor of the poor. Say put them at 300,000 in a state and give them 5 billion. Divide 300,000 by 5 billion and give me the figure.
The thing is, how do you even segment these people? When we talk about the vulnerable people in society, how do we identify who are the vulnerable? Because everybody is in need of food. And when you bring things like this, or you bring in food items, nobody wants to admit that I have enough in my house. Everybody wants their own share of it. So how do you then segment it and say this is for this person, or they are the ones actually in need of it? Although the arrangement is for the committee, which has Governor Charles Soludo as the chairman of the Nigeria Governors Forum, and then we have Governor Abdulrazak Abdulrahman of Kwara State and others to engage with the NLC. So it means like it's going to go according to the unions. But what about those who are not in these unions? How do they partake of this?
Ones. Well,
exactly, the non-unionized ones.
I would have
partake of this.
I would have loved them to, go to the level of the CDAs. The CDAs know the people in their locale. Unions, there is only so much the unions can do.
You see, the only thing that can do this is actually data. You see, because the level of corruption and decadency in our environment is mind-blowing. Even the CDA will not allow it get to the rate people that should need it.
But in the CDA, people, we know ourselves at the CDA level.
What about also collaborating?
Because when you go to the locals, because if you get to the locals, and I'm very honest here, these things, there are political patronage that are attached to it. If it gets to your state and you are PDP, be rest assured that other political parties are not going to get it because it's going to be part of our support for voting for us. This is the way resources had been used in this nation. And that's why I keep saying, you see, since we have made politics our superstructure, nothing can work. So for me, really, is, well, the president has done well, giving money to the state, but I think we need to really focus on the critical things that he says he's going to do, which will reduce the burden on people. And that, for me, is teaching people to fish.
Let's quickly turn now to aviation, where 16 people suspected to have engaged in activities such as touting, hawking, unauthorized foreign exchange operations, and scavenging within the Murtala Mohammed Airport premises have been arrested by a joint monitoring task force set up to enforce discipline in that environment. And also, you talked about this yesterday when we were looking at the portfolios assigned to the ministerial appointees, precisely that assigned to Festus Kiyamu. And you talked about touting, you talked about sanitizing the airport environment. So this is in line with what you talked about.
Well, thumb up to Kabir Mohammed, the new MD of FAN. He gave this assurance about a week ago, and he said he knows that Lagos is like area boy, and he's going to use the area boy approach to see how to clear out the Lagos airport. This is good news coming from him, and I want to say salute his effort and his courage to clean up that environment, because that's the gateway to the Nigerian nation, and it needs to be sanitized. It needs to be clean enough so that people can see us as people who are really responsible, people who are dutiful.
And I think that's a very good note to end this segment of the show. Let's take a breather now, and when we come back, we will start our talk about wealth creation, not about poverty in Africa this time. And you'll get to meet our guest who talks about how to tap wealth from the solid minerals sector of the economy. Don't go anywhere, please.
Are you ready for this? Okay, let's begin talking about creating wealth. But you do know that Nigeria is blessed with so many natural resources. Now we have a lot of solid minerals in Nigeria with over 44 different types of minerals found in commercial quantities. I'll just mention a few of those 44 solid minerals that are found in commercial quantities in Nigeria, spread across 500 locations in the 36 states of the country. We have gold. Okay, is that sounding like news to you? We do have gold in commercial quantity in Nigeria. We have barite, we have limestone, bitumen, kaolin, just to mention a few of these solid minerals. Now, in recent years, the Nigerian government has been channeling a lot of resources and making a lot of efforts to ensure that mining operations for these minerals commences and the country gains from this. So towards that, in 2016, the government launched the Solid Minerals Development Fund, SMDF, which is a $1 billion fund to provide financial support for the development of solid minerals. So to this, let's look at how much of the minerals are being mined, how much of gains are we having as a country from the mining of this sector, not just crude oil, but we have solid minerals. So how much of gains are we having? How much of private participation do we have? Because licenses have also been given to some to actually commence mining of the solid minerals. So we still have Idausa Osamanze, who is Director, Policy and Research, Africa Development Studies Center, to look at some of these areas that concerns solid mineral mining in Nigeria. Of the 44 minerals that we have in commercial quantity, from your assessment, does it seem like there are the mining operations have commenced for all of them, and we are actually mining at commercial capacity?
Well, talking about solid mineral, some years ago, that was 2009, we were in the UAE, and we're having this conversation with one of the directors of United Arab Emirates School of Strategic Studies. The president of UAE had invited Nigerian government to sit down to actually look at what their problem was. And then, of course, that delegation went to the UAE. It was a high-powered one led by the vice president then, who later became the president. And they came up with what they called the Abu Dhabi Accord. Now, one of the things that came out from that meeting was the fact that Nigeria was proposing to be among the first 20 economy in 20 years. And by the time they finished that conversation, doing the analysis of what was underground on our soil in terms of mineral resources, they discovered that of all the precious stones mentioned in the book of Revelation, 8 of them were in Nigeria in commercial quantity. When you talk topaz, onyx, they are in Nigeria in commercial quantity. And so the problem was, and the question was, what is really the problem? That we could actually be among the first 5 economies of the world in 5 years. Whatever happened to that accord, I don't know. We are still where we are. A lot of mining is going on in Nigeria. But whether we are getting the value for those activities is another question completely. Because you're taking the raw resources out. The kings, the villagers, they get peanuts. And then the real product, which come out from the sand, from the rock, is used elsewhere to create wealth. And I think that's where we need to actually look at the challenge before us. You know, in his book, Buy Your Future, Mensa Otabe talked about a paradigm of looking at wealth creation. And he said, for countries like Africa and most of the third world, they have what he called the Esau mentality. You eat everything raw. We don't know how to cultivate. And I think if we have to gain value from solid minerals, we must learn the Jacob mentality, the ability to cultivate and reap the fruits in the immediate future.
This you talk of the Esau mentality and the Jacob mentality reminds me of a seminar that was held sometime in 2012 when someone said that Vision 2020 would fail. And all of us were like, oh, don't be a prophet of doom. He said, no, I'm not prophesying doom to the nation, because apart from the pronouncement, there is no framework on ground to make it happen. 2020 came, Nigeria is still not part of the top 20 economies in the world. We're far from it. So beyond making pronouncement, there has to be deliberate policies.
Yeah.
And in the area of solid minerals, yes, we do know that it's always in the news every time. Federal government spending this on these, and we have challenges, illegal miners, which you referenced in your opening speech there. People are mining. But who are the ones that are licensed to mine? Then what about the value chain? Like you said, we eat everything raw. Raw is the order of the day in Nigeria, and we're not going anywhere because most people will not be able to identify gold when you see raw gold here. Now, for those who export it, they get peanuts. I mean, those who give them, give some people the raw version, they get peanuts when we could get so much more. Gold is one store of value globally. Whatever you keep in gold stays in gold. You don't. Some would tell you to buy gold as against keeping money in the bank from the investment standpoint. And we have kaolin, we have limestone here and there. Well, I just hope that maybe we'll start looking at the policy measures that should be put in place, not just at the formulation stage, but at the implementation stage, because we don't really lack policies in Nigeria, so to speak. We lack effective implementation. That's my take on that.
Yeah, but I think implementation is one thing. You know, in the circle of training, in every training that is you organize, there's a triangle of what the takeaway should actually be. The first triangle is knowledge. The first angle is knowledge. You know, knowing how to do something, knowing what to do. Then the second angle is skill, ability to do what you know. And then, of course, the third angle is attitude, which is the motivation to do what you know how to do. Now, this is the real area where we need to put a lot of emphasis. We have so much information about what can bring wealth. Now, the key question and the critical question is, do we have the requisite skills to develop these areas? And that's why you hear a lot of hue and cry the other day on social media when the report came and said, oh, Dangote Refinery, over 11,000 expatriates were recruited. What is happening to us? Yeah, it's not just enough to go give you a job, but you have the skill to do the job. And I think this is where we have to be deliberate in terms of developing our school curriculums so that we are producing graduates who has the wherewithal, who has the ability, the competencies, the capacity to put knowledge to work, and with the right attitude set or character or the right motivation to ensure that we are producing these issues. This, for me, is where the real problem lies. The area of skill gaps and weak attitude or character problem.
Okay, let's look at the license issuing when it comes to solid mineral. Now, one would have thought that we would have learned from the problem that we still have in the oil and gas, where what we're doing is just exploration of crude and then exporting, we then import the refined crude. Now, for any company that is licensed, it would have been expected that the company has not just the ability to explore, but also to refine these solid minerals. But what we're seeing is a repeat of the approach we used for crude oil exploration. We are just only exploring, drilling crude oil and exporting, but there is no refining. And also, it seemed more like there is so more artisanal activity going on when it comes to the solid mineral sector. People are doing their own mining at their own level, almost at an individual basis, not a structured mining activity from what you would expect of a company that is licensed to run such a sector.
It will shock you that a lot of these artisanal miners are actually licensed by the government of Nigeria. I had this conversation some time ago with the DJ of Solid Mineral, the artisanal mining angle of it. You see, a lot of them are licensed. You see, it's just like every other thing, where we as a nation, we will really need to speak to our consciences as a people. You don't have capacity to do something.
And then you're
You
licensed
take a
for it.
license. And then you bring foreigners and they help you do the mining. And of course, all that you're looking out for is to sell. So this is the real problem we face. And this is why I had to bring in the argument of Mensa Otabi, of the Esau mentality, that we are too hungry that we feel that a one-day meal can kill us. And the ability to invest in the future is the big problem for us. So if we as a people do not embrace, this understanding of critically also developing our skill set to grow some certain industry, like they say, nobody transfer technology to anybody. You have to grow it in-house. And there are some people who are doing well really in-house. They also need the motivation of government to empower them and give them what it takes to be able to compete globally. And some of all these things, we can see them really coming to light.
All right, thank you, Idausa. We are joined via Zoom now by Mr. Kefas Magui, who is the Deputy Director and Head, Geosciences and Data Management Department, Solid Mineral Development Fund, Abuja. Good morning, Mr. Kefas. Thanks for joining us on the show today.
Thank you, gentlemen. Good morning.
Yeah, good morning. Good to see you on the show. So we're looking at the unexplored potentials of our solid minerals. We do know that it's a big moneymaker if we do the needful. But then, give us an overview of the state of our solid minerals with respect to exploration and really tapping into the real potentials of it. How big are these potentials and how much of it are we tapping into? Let's start the conversation with that.
Thank you very much for this opportunity, and I think it's a great thing for us to discuss this as a matter of concern. Nigeria. Clearly, I will tell you that the mineral sector in Nigeria actually is having a potential that I don't think we can even quantify right now. Because the truth is this: Nigeria is more of a mineral-based country than even oil-based. We have so much potential that virtually every local government in Nigeria can independently exist based on the mineral resources that they have. And this is not just a hearsay, these are based on facts. Investigations have done so far in Nigeria, from Geological Survey to other agencies right now that are actually into mineral exploration, have clearly indicated that Nigeria is really blessed. Now, we're not just blessed in terms of having the minerals alone, we're also blessed by having specialized minerals that, or what people call as strategic minerals in some developed countries. China, France, you can't export what Nigeria is so much blessed today. But here we are in a nation that every chick and Harry can come up we still don't even have value for what we have. And to answer your question straight, I will still tell you clearly, Nigeria is so blessed that if we are talking of mineral resources of Nigeria, from our local industry to the export-oriented, Nigeria is so blessed in that. And maybe with time, as we're going on, maybe we may have the chance of going into the specifics.
All right, thank you very much for joining us. Moving ahead, you just talked about Nigeria being blessed with so many minerals. Where are we in terms of building capacity and of the value chain? Have we even created the value chain that would take us from exploration to processing and having the full benefit of these minerals? And how are we building the capacity to handle the commercial quantity of the reserves that we have?
Okay, clearly, let me be a little bit technical here. When it comes to capacity, the whole process, because one, we're not just interested in the geologists or the mining engineers alone. The mineral value chain is so wide, and I can give for metals. Let's take, for example, tin. Tin in Nigeria today is being seen as a commodity. Actually, tin has been discovered in more than maybe 20 states in Nigeria. And look at the local content. If you look at the local mining here, it's just being done with no much value attached to it. So ideally, we should be able to add value to our tin mineralization or our tin commodities by mining. Now, surprisingly, Nigeria doesn't have a single existing refinery today. So you see, in terms of capacity, we don't even have anything yet. Commodities, for example, Colombia, Nigeria's second biggest producer in the world today, despite the fact that we don't have mechanized large-scale mining operations. But Nigeria's second biggest. Now, imagine if we have the facility to smelt or to refine our columbite. Imagine the job opportunity it's going to create, because it's very, very strategic in the high-tech industry. All our cell phones, all the high-tech aeroplanes that is being piloted are actually made from these commodities. Now, we talk of tantalite. These are minerals that occur together. And this is where Nigeria is having its highest strength in terms of these base metals. We're not talking about the lead that is actually being used in most of the batteries we're using today. Then now, of recent discovery is so peculiarly blessed in terms of lithium mineralization, because in the whole world, Nigeria, Afghanistan, and Kazakhstan are known to be having the largest deposit, despite that we have not even done a comprehensive evaluation of our lithium deposit. And now we're talking of green energy. There's nothing we will do about renewable energy without talking about lithium mineralization today. Speaking of the value chain, we've not even started even exploring, talk less of even doing the mining, talk less of even going into the refining process, which is a very long value chain process. So we have a lot of opportunities that we have not tapped yet. And I'm hoping that with this government coming in, there's going to be a conscious effort towards the development of the mineral sector. And the most important thing now is for us to have, one, capacity in terms of personnel, two, to have as well some of the refineries that need to be set up, especially the basic ones, the smelters. So that's the opportunity that we can talk about for now.
Okay, sir. Thank you for that submission. I would have asked you why, because you know so much about this, and I know that a lot of people, maybe in your capacity, know as much as you do. Is it a lack of information about what people like you know that is limiting us from even exploring the possibilities, or it is lack of political will? I wouldn't know where the problem is, because if we have so much and we can benefit so much, yet we're not doing it, make the connect. Something is not, looking up there. Is it that there is no information or
You're
not
right.
enough information there, or we don't have the political will to make it happen?
There are so many missing links here. What you have just mentioned is part of it. One, there's no strong political will. The last government really tried to inject some certain funding, but mining is not done by the state. The truth is this: to develop a single mineral resources, it's not going to be a small thing. That's why, if you look at it carefully, even in the oil sector, government go in partnership with the multinationals who are actually the pioneer in terms of the exploration and development. Now, the same thing with the mineral sector. Mineral sector is somehow a little bit easier in the sense that we can bring in different companies, for example, Rio Tinto, all these big multinational companies, to come and do the work. But the point is, before you get to that point, there are basic data that must be available to convince the world. So if supposing now we are supposed to generate geotechnical data about a deposit, for example, in Ondo State, and then we don't have that information, what are we going to market to the world? So that's where the government have to play some certain role. And if you leave me, I will really suggest that the government should be able to take at least one major deposit. Let it come from a recommendation from Geological Survey in each of the 6 geopolitical zones. Develop that and let it serve as a prototype. Because you see, Nigerians are having high skepticism. So many people have burned their fingers over and over because they have not done the right thing or they are following the wrong way. You have to know from the beginning, if you're going to make an investment, you should be able to know how much that investment is going to cost you, how long it's going to take you to get done, and then what's the expected returns on investment. So, but if you don't have that data, you are only going in, and then when you start, you don't know where you're going to end. So that's a major critical factor that's hampering the development of the sector, because some people have burned their fingers over and over and over. So now, the best thing that let government take on, for example, in each of the 6 geopolitical zones, identify a commodity that we know is going to be highly economical. We have from the industrial minerals, the base metals, then the precious metals. Nigeria is so diverse. So pick one from the 6 geopolitical zones. Nigerians are so interested in making investment. So the moment that they can see one that is actually coming on and then being fruitful, like what Segilola is doing right now in the Southwest, it's one of the major turning points for us in the country. And honestly, you need to hear what that guy did, because from my experience, I can tell you clearly, gold is one of the last things I would like to invest in. I spent over most of my years of service investigating gold from Nigeria up to throughout the West African sub-region. But I cannot just imagine how that guy was able to make it through without any support from anywhere. So those are things that we need to actually conscientize our society. If Nigerians should get to understand that this business is viable, is economical, of course they will invest there. They will go look for any funding anywhere in the world to get it invested. Nobody uses his own money actually to develop a mine site. That's the truth. So that's one of the major challenges. People don't really understand what actually the sector is. That's one. Two, the risk is very high. So people have burned their fingers over and over. They need to actually understand what did they do. They need to do in order to avoid such kind of mistakes.
All right, so how would collaboration with international organizations, industry experts, because you have also talked about people not knowing what to do. So collaboration with industry experts, international organizations to attract the kind of knowledge, the investments that the sector needs. How will this contribute to sustainable development, and which is the route towards this?
I think we're already taking shape within the past, let's say, 1 decade, because now there's one major principle in mining. We have, from day one, before you even start opening the ground, you must have known the value of the mineral you have in ground asset. Now, if supposing you have a lithium deposit that is worth $1 billion, and you need $100 million to develop that very property, or $50 million to develop that very property and acquire machineries, you can plan that from the beginning. But, Unfortunately, what's happening today is that everyone just wants to say it and they start mining without actually doing the evaluation. That on its own is a problem. But for us to move forward, the process of JV partnership, acquisition, because for example, a company that is having a license, haven't gotten the license, doesn't have the resources to develop, even to generate the basic exploration data. Somebody may come with $1 million, invest in that very property, and then generate all the technical data. You see, the first person that owns the license will be consumed by the second person. The second person that generated data will sell the data to international mining companies, who will now come and then acquire the entire process. That is the clear game that's always happening in mining sector. And I think in that context, I think we're not doing badly either, because there are a lot of companies that are coming in now that I've seen based on the original data generated by the very fantastic. I am privileged to be part of the team, and I've seen some of the data coming out, and they are really, really helping us a lot. So that is, I think, in that context, we have already started taking the right trajectory, and we're going to move forward in that context.
All right.
It might take some time, but certainly we are in the right direction now.
Okay, sir. Earlier in your submission, you mentioned the fact that going into mining is a very risky investment, and the risk factor is part of why some people don't go into it. But then, as the expert that you are in this particular field, are there risk mitigation policy frameworks that you can, suggest? Maybe this can bring in investors to play in that sector. What are the likely risk mitigation policies we can implement as a country to attract investors into mining?
Yes, one of the risk mitigating now, generating regional data, but that is not going to be adequate. Recently, the Nigeria Geological Survey launched the aeromagnetic data that was generated at we have more information coming out from the one we had previously. So that is one of the strategies. But mining companies need deposit-specific data. And that means if supposing now you have a good gold, the lithium deposit in Oyo State, what do you need to do? First and foremost is for you to invest in that exploration data. Generate enough data that will be able to give you a point of decision. The point we're always making is this. Most of our licenses in the country ranges between 20 to 40 square kilometers. Now, you cannot spend, a Nigerian cannot spend, for example, $2-3 million on just generating data over, any of the minerals deposit within your 40 square kilometer area. So the strategy or the mitigation approach is this. You can define a small basic area and then do at the initial stage, doing the geological, the structural, the geochemical data generation will be comprehensive. But then when you have defined an anomalous area, it could just maybe one cadastre unit, which is 450 by 450 meters. That's half a kilometer by half a kilometer approximately. So now at that point, you can come back and then dwell much on that. Go to the next phase, which is going to be drilling. And that's one of the most costly aspects of exploration work. And that's why most Nigerians, I can guarantee you, out of the 100% licenses in the country, maybe 80% of licenses that doesn't have even a drill data. Not even one hole has been sunk. So how can you come out with a convincing bankable data without drilling? It's not possible. So those are the kind of strategy that I think we're advocating today. That, okay, if you have done some of the basic information, like maybe, for example, we have up to 60% of the companies have done basic geological, structural, geochemical data generation. Come down and then identify the anomalous area. Pick, even if it's going to be one cadastre, out of your 40 square kilometer area, pick only one cadastre, which is half a kilometer by half a kilometer. That if you're sure that's going to be economical enough, and then conduct some basic drilling on it. The drilling might, for most of the mining that we expect in Nigeria, should be an open cast system. So if it's open cast system, we don't expect to go beyond the depth of 50 meters. So these are strategies that we're implementing that I think will help us move forward. As per within my own level of advice, that's what I give people these days.
All right, let's talk about resource sharing. For areas where these minerals have been identified and exploration have commenced, have they started benefiting in terms of revenue allocation to them?
Yes, you see, I don't want to go to policy issues, but I want to clearly tell you here that in terms of benefits, a lot of information are being misrepresented out there. You see, if a company have done its basic exploration work, you graduate from an exploration license to a mining lease. The mining lease is assumed that you've already done comprehensive exploration. You define where you want to start your mining operation. At that point, the community themselves would be major stakeholders, because in your license, for example, it's 40 square kilometer license. It's covering a very large community, I mean, large area that may host about 3 or 4 communities. But at the end of the day, you discover that your work is going to be confined to a single community. That's why you sign your community development agreement with that particular community. And now, when you start doing your work, your host community is a major stakeholder in your mining operation. So they stand to benefit immediately. On the long term, every commodity you mine in Nigeria have its own standard royalty payment system. Now, it has been defined by the Mines Inspectorate. The Mines Inspectorate will now have to generate its own data to make sure what you produce is actually being paid for in terms of its royalty, which is a stipend. And truly, if all of us are doing the same thing, that paying the royalties, then that means the story will change. But for now, very few people have actually done what they need to do. That's why we have a problem still with the mining sector. We have not really kickstarted anything. Remember, Segilola paid over ₦1 billion recently as royalties. That's a clear indication that if we're doing the right thing, that means more companies will pay such kind of money. That will also come back into federal government coffers, which will be used as well as part of the revenue generation and then be distributed as well. So the structure is already there. Is for us to get that level of actually doing the right mining, then we and then revenue generation generally.
All right, sir. On the very last note from me here, I'd like you to scan the horizon for us. What is the outlook like for the Nigeria's mineral sector, solid mineral sector? What does it look like 5 years from now? What do you see? Do you see possibilities and new frontiers being reached?
Candid opinion, I will tell you clearly, the future is very bright. We need to develop is to make sure every little mineral that's being mined in Nigeria, first, we should encourage its beneficiation. That's the processing. We should discourage exporting raw ore out of Nigeria. That's one. 2, we should be able to also build a strong database of particular deposit. And that is very simple. Even from satellite, we can monitor every mine site. We shouldn't continue promoting exporting our. It's not helping us at all. It's like sending our crude oil out of Nigeria, and that is a problem that we've all identified as a nation. We shouldn't just be sending our crude oil out of this country because there are other associated benefits out of it. The same thing with minerals, for example. Why should we be exporting your ore while you know that for sure there are other associated commodities that's actually found with this mineral? So we should be able to process it, have a value addition to our commodities. I think this is very critical. But in terms of the future, it's looking great.
Okay, for the processing, if we have artisanal miners, can't we also have artisanal refiners of some of these minerals that are mined? And how can the government encourage some of them if we do have them?
Yeah, you see, what you just mentioned here is what we call the modular refineries. We have them in different sizes, different capacities. It's a very simple thing. Individual companies can buy that kind of thing. For example, the smelter, which is the first stage activity. What the smelters or the refineries does is this. If you mine, for example, you have the exportable grade tin out of Nigeria is called 60% export grade. Now, you can smell this concentrate for export, but then the question is, what constitutes the remaining 40%? The remaining 40% could be silica, could be other related metals, that if you now introduce a smelter, the smelter will now give you 100%, almost 100%, because you give about 99.9% tin ingot. So you see, you have reduced the waste that are shipping out of Nigeria, and then now producing virtually 100% metal. The price difference between that concentrate that they're exporting and the price of 99.9% tin ingot, you won't believe it, it's almost twice that amount.
Okay, sir. Thank
So
you,
that's why
sir.
we encourage this kind of activities to
All
happen.
right. Thank you, sir. Our time is up on the segment. I want to say a very big thank you to you, Mr. Kefas Magui, the Deputy Director or Head, Geosciences and Data Management Department, Solid Minerals Development Fund, Abuja, for educating us on how we can latch on to the potentials of the solid minerals sector of Nigeria. We have learned a lot, and we believe that policy makers and shapers have also learned a lot. So we'll go on a very short break now. When we come back, we'll look at future forwarding, or what we'll talk about playing the game of the future. How should African countries take part in the game of the future so that we can be winners, not just participants? And this time around, I am not talking about sports, I'm talking about investing, wealth creation. I'll tell you all of that when we come back from this break. Don't go anywhere. Thank you. Welcome back to Early Exchange on Souq News. The joke is told of a father whose son came back home with a poor result, and then the father was asking him, where were you when your peers were coming first in class? And he asked his father, where were you when Zuckerberg invented Facebook? Where were you when, when Thomas Edison came up with the incandescent bulb? Wow, it was a joke. It was meant to be, give me one banter, give me another banter. But today, we must ask ourselves these questions as Africans. Where were we when development was taking place all over the world before now? That is not as important as where we will be in the future when we talk about new superpowers who will emerge because they take advantage of the possibilities of our time. We are talking about playing the future game. 10 years from now, where will African countries be? Would we be mere observers? Because some wonder how things happen, some marvel why things happen, while some are making the things happen. Would we be part of the countries that will make things happen on a global scale or not? It is not enough to say, yes, by God's grace we will be. God will play his own role, but we must play our own roles as intentional living beings. And that is part of what we're looking at today. If you look at some indices, either the Global Innovation Index, the Bloomberg Innovation Index, or the World Economic Forum Global Index, all of them point to 3 different countries who are leading innovators in the world. We're talking about the US, Sweden, and Switzerland. The question is, at what point will one African country, or maybe several others, be part of that particular clique of nations who are leading innovation? Blessing, that is my concern this morning as we take a look at the future game. How smart countries prepare to win the game of the future.
It's interesting, and there are countries that are doing that and are already on the front list when you talk about innovation and preparing for the future. There is Sweden, there is China, there is Singapore, and so many other countries. Now, for countries like South Korea and Singapore, these countries are emerging economies, and it's interesting to know how they've been able to turn the fortunes of their country around. And for African countries, I would say that African countries are not doing enough in that respect, because you can't just be watching, or we can't just be watching and then trying to engage in the game of catch-up. We want to catch up when something has already started happening, or when the word has already set in a particular direction. We then begin to try catch up. That's because we're not paying attention to the things that we should be paying attention to. It is funny that at this time of life, or this time that the word is in, when technology is the in thing, we are still trying to get it right with agriculture. And even trying to get it right with agriculture, we are still talking subsistence agriculture. We're not even doing mechanized agriculture as we should in this part of the world, not to talk about technology. So these are some of the aspects that we should be looking at. Look at how India has been able to turn fortunes around for themselves in the aspect of technology. They focused on education, developing human capacity in that aspect. And so they export human capital. A lot of expatriates that you have coming from other countries come from Asia. You have those from India, you have those coming from China, you have those coming from other Asian countries. So in our educational curriculum, we should design our curriculum in the way that it can attend to present day needs. Enough of having education that is of old, education that is just like you only want people to be able to speak English, not really attend to the basic needs of today. So that is where we should start from: education, research, and that's where you empower people to actually innovate, because without information they cannot innovate, they cannot create something new. So it starts with our educational systems in Africa. If we can get it right with education and tailor the education to be solution providers, or what can build capacity or put to be solution providers, then I think that we'll be on the right track.
Yes, I do agree with you on all fronts there. Education is critical, the one that can actually transform, lives and drive innovation, so that we will be one of the leading countries in just a matter of years to come. Okay, we're not alone to discuss this, because we have an expert via Zoom who will speak to these and some other issues. I am talking about Seyi Akinseyinde, the CTO of Digital Encode. Akindeyinde, I beg your pardon. He will be talking to us about how African countries can position themselves to become champions, not just participants in the global game of the future. Seyi, good morning.
Good morning, good morning.
Okay. So, good to have you join us on the program once again today. We're talking about playing the game of the future. We don't just want to emerge at the future being just observers of what is happening there. We want to be, when I say we, I mean African countries. We are saying we must be part of the global players, those who will control the innovations of the future. But why are we not doing enough of this, and how do we go from here? Let's start from that.
Well, thank you very much. You see, you actually made mention of a few things in your introductory, speech there. We're not doing enough because the government actually isn't also doing enough, because for you to actually partake in this global industrialization, you need people, you need research, you need funding, you need education. And if you check our curriculum, it isn't aligning with where the world is going. Like, if you check, I have a blog on my LinkedIn where I usually write on topical issues like this. And I just recently wrote on a few issues, which is bordering around, especially in our technology sector. I run a company, and I'm a co-founder in a company. And what we do basically is technology. And what we've discovered is that the people that are coming out of these universities are ill